Welcome to the Science and Paranormal with Dr. Yana and Dr. Elliott, where science meets the unexpected, where we delve deep into the mysteries that straddle the line between scientific inquiry and paranormal. Get ready for a mind-altering journey as we embark on this phenomenal discovery together on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM.
Welcome back to another episode of Science and the Paranormal. I'm here with Dr. Yana. We have a very special guest tonight, Michelle Desrochers, and myself, Dr. Elliott. And we are broadcasting live tonight from the beautiful city of New Orleans. And you are listening to us on the United Public Radio Network. Also, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM, where we are also on Roku TV. Welcome back.
Nice. Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. It is so nice to be back again. Dr. Elliott was stating that we are everywhere, so join us wherever you are. We have fantastic guests every week, and today we have her divine elegance, Michelle Desrochers, back with us again. She's so fantastic and so knowledgeable in every topic and such a beautiful soul. Welcome back, Michelle.
Well, thank you for the introduction. My goodness, I'm going to have to try to live up to all that now. Especially the whole divine part.
Yes. And you're living it, not living up. You are living it. And we know that.
Well, thank you. But it's nice to be here, as always. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And tonight we're going to discuss UFOs with you, I hear.
Yes, apparently so. That's okay. It's really become a topic that has become near and dear. I think a lot of people in the paranormal field eventually migrate over because of all the similarities, and you start realizing that maybe some of the paranormal experiences you had weren't so paranormal after all. Maybe it was something else, which is a lot of that has happened for me. So it's been quite a journey.
Well, I think whatever was and still is called paranormal, we already have scientific evidence for that. Mm-hmm. And what used to be called magic is now science, pure science. If we look at it, in metaphysics, it's physics, right? And alchemy, if we just look at that, the chemistry, so the parent of the modern chemistry science. So not so much of the paranormal. It might be just normal for us.
Right.
So, Michelle, how did you get interested in this UFO phenomena?
Well, it goes back further than I anticipated, but researching the paranormal actually got me more involved in the UFO side of things, because at least half of the people that I was working with, or the families that I was assisting, at least half of them had extraterrestrial experiences, sightings, or UFO sightings, which when I started over the years realizing just how many there were, at that point, I realized like there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. And it just took me a little bit of time to, get involved and get on board with that, because it just wasn't something I was versed in. That's taken me a few years of being, I know, more of an aware contactee experiencer now, because things have started happening again.
I was very surprised to hear that we were going to discuss UFOs with you, because, on the outer realm, we're usually talking about ghosts and parapsychology and all that stuff. And just before the show started, Dr. Yana asked if I had an interest in UFOs, which I certainly do.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny when I started out investigating the paranormal I was more of a subject matter expert on UFOs, but what happened is I find once I created my nonprofit investigative organization, type of calls and emails that you get to respond to mostly have to do with ghosts and hauntings. So I ended up becoming a subject matter expert in ghosts and hauntings and poltergeists, and not so much anymore in UFOs. But have always found the subject fascinating. I find things right now in today's society are going really well with there's a big pressure on the government to start disclosing more and more information. You're getting employees with the government coming forward talking about their UFO experiences. I worked for the Canadian government myself for 15 years. Back in the 80s, the RCMP used to actually investigate UFO. So it's really nice to kind of see, the government transparency coming out to an extent.
Well, thanks to Paul Hillier.
Yes, and there's been a lot of pressure too from some of the U.S. politicians there, which is great. But I was really surprised to hear that you had I knew you'd be interested in pretty much everything, but it was.
Well, I mean, the outer realm, we tackle pretty much anything. We have people from all walks of life. For me, the more I started having guests on, I was sort of like, that kind of sounds familiar. And I just started interviewing more people, and bringing on people that could maybe answer questions that I had. So I was very, very selective early on as to who would come on, and because it was helping me on my journey. And I started realizing as a child that I was already a contactee. And, growing up in like Northern Ontario, right? I was already a contactee and I could see things in the skies. And then I would ask, my parents, did you guys have any experiences? Oh yeah, we would see things all the time. So did your grandfather. He had a telescope. He was always looking at the sky. What? Like, okay, well, all right. So I started just researching. And then, in the last probably 4 years, everything started happening pretty much full throttle for me outside of investigating. I just started, in my mind, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm ready. Okay, I'm going to do this. Everybody says that. They think they're ready. They're not. But I said, okay, I'm ready. Then things started happening. I'm like, no. I'm not ready. Yeah. So
like what, Michelle? Like what? What kind of things started happening?
It was just like whiplash. No, I just want to do it. I don't want to do it. I do. I don't. Because it was weird things. Like we came back one night from filming a show in Niagara-on-the-Lake, most haunted town, right, in Canada, allegedly. And all of a sudden, this big, bright light, it was huge, like the size of a deer, went over the car in front of us. It just went over the height of a stop sign. And if you look to the left where it came from, it's a 450-foot drop into the Niagara River. So if a deer would need to work up quite a bit of speed to jump that high and leap over a 2-lane road with bike paths. So, Wayne looks at me because nobody wants to be that guy, right? So he looks at me. I'm sitting there quiet and he goes, did you see that? Thank God you saw that and it wasn't just me. And I'm like, yes. And it was a large, almost like iridescent type of something. I'm like, okay, if it's a bag, it's going to be on the side of the road. We stopped. We looked. There was nothing. And that is what set the ball in motion. Then I started getting bright lights just shooting through the house, just name it. I can give you all kinds of experiences that started at that point and are still happening.
That's really interesting. I love the cases too. Like, even that case that you just talked about or experience sounds familiar because there was from one of my books, it was either supernatural encounters or more supernatural encounters from law enforcement. But there was a military police officer riding with her partner, and same thing. She was in the passenger seat and she saw this strange object in the sky, and she was watching it for a while. And she kind of see her partner kind of paying attention to it as well. They weren't really communicating about it, but then finally she said the same thing that you did. Like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And they started to talk about this UFO sighting that they saw. But
it's tough when you're logical because you have to keep analyzing it till it's, you can only beat the horse so many times, right? It's just like
they're
to death, right?
Exactly.
They're difficult to
How many
investigate
times?
too, especially when you only have encounter the first kind where it's light in the sky, especially today, like with drones. That certainly added a bit of complexity to things. Starlink satellites are still getting confused for UFOs. And there's so much space junk out there now. So it's really interesting.
But this is so interesting that you mentioned the Starlink, Elliott, because I saw one here and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't have any idea about the Starlink. However, I researched it and I saw it probably a couple of months ago, and that's what a Starlink. And I thought, okay, that one of the rockets could also be, because we have so many military bases here. Then I started researching, and those occurrences actually take place in Africa, in Australia, in so many different places when there's no Starlinks. So I don't know, because I'm also, Michelle, like you, a very logical person, and I try to explain everything. However, some things just don't make sense. I'm sorry for interrupting, Dr. Elliott, but I just wanted to comment.
No, like I've only seen Starlink once, and to me, it didn't look like a UFO. Like it literally looked like a pattern of light. Yeah, like in the sky.
It's the same pattern every time, right?
Well, how about this one? I had a friend of mine who was living in the Burlington Bay, and she messages me and she says, "Heads up, coming your way," and she explained what it was, and I was like, "All right, I'll bite." So I said, we're going to take a little drive down by the river. And just around the time where it should have been coming in was this cloud. And it was the strangest looking cloud. And it was just coming towards us. I'm going, okay, well, it's a cloud, funky shaped cloud, but a cloud nonetheless. And then it was just like shooting off light like this. I'm going, it's strange lightning, but there's going to be some lightning, I'm just playing it out. So it keeps going. And as we watch it go the other way, like it was moving pretty good for a cloud. And in the back end of it looks like there was metal sticking out of the back of a circular. So you have a circular cloud shooting off light. And as it goes by, it's almost just like they're mooning you a little bit, just a little piece coming out the back. And I'm like, hey, forgot to cover up. But it was interesting because you could see this glimmer, and it was this dark, shiny hue.
Interesting. I love the cases where some sort of physical evidence has been left behind. There's been a couple cases where people report that the paint on their car has been scorched because they're too close, to a UFO. Or the Stephen Michalak case out in Manitoba. There, he ended up having radiation sickness after his experience. Have you investigated any close encounters such as that?
Not particularly, because I got out of investigating altogether. I get people to come on and talk about it now, but I was working with a family who was having some terrible paranormal activity. I mean, it had been going on for like 2-3 decades. It was crazy. And one night, the story went that, one of the family members saw something that looked almost like cryptid, like a wolf person of some sort. And, he bolted in the house. He was out what I call watering the dog, letting the dog go out for a few minutes, and drags the dog in. That's it. We're going in. And all of a sudden something hit the door, and he was like sniffing the top of the door frame. So upon further investigating, it turned out that within that same week, like within about 3 or 4 days time, there were reports of a craft seen in the town, and there was a neighboring farm not far away, and all the workers left because they saw a gray in the barn. And there was probably 10 to 12 calls that had come into the local police department. So I'm thinking, okay, that's a bit different, you know. So you had a little bit of a crossover there. Aside from that, people just saying no, you know, a lot of the things that people were experiencing with, you know, paranormal alleged entities coming in, tearing through, you know, portals and veils and things like that, are the same sounds that you experience as a contactee, an ET contactee.
So
Same
what
with sleep paralysis, all this stuff, same stuff.
so what do you think about this phenomena, Michelle? If you're saying that if it is the same stuff, then could that be that everything that we talk about in the spiritual realm could also be something of the alien type or extraterrestrial activity?
I think it's very possible. Like for me, 50-50, I would say. I know my own personal experiences because you know people ask me about demons all the time, and I laugh because they see me on TV, and it's like you know, and I answer I don't know how many questions when I'm going on these TV shows, and in the end, they're like, "But it could be this, right?" I guess. Can you just say it like this? You know, but again, it's you come into the fact that logic tells you. I first thing I usually say is telekinesis, psychokinesis, you know, but it could be this. Anyway, that's besides the point. If you follow the traditional demonic entity attachment or infestation within a home, you know, hearing static lights and popping sounds, smells of sulfur, extraterrestrials do the exact same thing. Sulfur smells.
That's interesting because at the 2023 Halifax Paranormal Symposium, we had Dr. Richard Gallagher come speak about demons, and
Right.
towards the end of it, man, he caused a bit of a stir with the crowd. But he basically presented like his theory on extraterrestrials, and he linked it to basically like more or less saying that they were equivalent to like demons. Like he feels that like extraterrestrials that visit people are basically demonic.
Some.
And there was like some hardcore UFO people that were just like kind of like that really rubbed them the
It's
wrong way.
tough.
Yeah, I actually got an email from somebody that was like really upset, and you know, I talked to my wife about it, like how to respond to this email, and you know, she said, well, she's like, you know, it's a symposium, we're inviting these experts here, and we're here to listen to their opinion. You know,
That's
it's
right.
their expert opinion, and you know, it's supposed to be like an inclusive, you know,
That's why you have disclaimers.
symposium. Yeah, like and like I even told the guy when I wrote back, I said, you know, I personally don't link demons and aliens together. I keep separate things, but you know, to each their own.
A lot of people think they're very different. But I mean, when you're looking at aliens, you have good, you have bad. It's just like people, you know. I've been astonished when people have said to me they've come into contact with reptilians, and they're going, "Oh no, they're quite kind." I'm like, what? It's like, tell that to some of the people that I've come into contact with who had the fear of God instilled into them because they just see some big reptilian show up. It looks nothing like a demonic energy. That then they're quite aggressive. And I've just had people say no. Some of them are. So I'm like, okay, you know, fair's fair.
And
Good
it looks
people,
like
bad people. Good reptilian, bad reptilian. You know, you look at some people who have had contact experiences with like mantis, giant mantis.
Yes, I've heard of cases like that. Yeah.
And well, I've you know, I know of one woman, and hoping she'll be a future guest, but it was horrific. Yet I have had, you know, Preston Dennett, a really good friend who writes about a lot of positive extraterrestrial stories. He goes, here's some very good stories about mantis. So I'm just like, okay, so you just look at this big, scary 12-foot bug looking at you, wanted to bring you on a ship and take off with you. Okay, I'm comfortable with that. No, I'm not. You know, so, but
and hopefully that's not going to happen.
For sure. I've had grays in the house, and I find myself saying, gosh, just let me fall asleep first. I just don't even want to know. just don't even want to know. If I have to go to work, I go to work. If I have to do this, whatever, because I know what's happening. I wake up like exhausted. I feel hands on my head. I get downloads. I get, I wake up. Sometimes it's like you feel like you're just being like hands on you. And, okay, the other house was haunted as heck. So I put all that off. That could be the ghosts. Okay, no problem.
So,
But
Michelle, when that happens with you at night and you get downloads, do you record it, all the information that comes your way?
no, I don't record it.
Is it too much? Is it too much because you get so many downloads, or?
Here's how it is for me. I just seem to wake up knowing things.
Mm-hmm.
And really that's how it is. Sometimes if it's very vivid, I wake up right away and I go in and I put it in my notepad. I just talk it out to my phone right away. Then I try to get through all the talk to text errors after that, going, what was I trying to say? But I realize I'm exhausted. But if I don't do that, it's gone. It's just,
Right.
It's gone. However, I find myself where I'm researching. So let's say I'm at my computer and I'm researching, and all of a sudden I'm being pulled in all these different directions as to what to go look for. And then I find all of this information and I'm just like, wow, I like stuff that I wanted to know about before. But you just think about it, oh, I'll get to it one day. I'll just research it. And there it is. It's all in front of you. So then you just start cross-referencing to see what you filter out and what you're left with.
And it is so important, Michelle, that you're talking about it and you're bringing that to the general population, because people are having the similar experiences, I'm sure, but they don't know what it is, how to reference it at all. I know that I was keeping quiet for quite a long time because I didn't know that the other people can also have the same experience. And it looks like what we do here, we approach the subject from our own frame of reference. Like Dr. Elliott now says that those two things are different to him, the demonic activity and then the alien activity. And I, for instance, over the years of my own research and same downloads, and sometimes it gets so funny and you have to laugh at it, otherwise you're just going to go crazy, with all those experiences.
That's true.
To me, interestingly enough, that I was able to put the psychological terms, because we all come from different frameworks, right? And there's published literature on so many different things, and archetypal psychology is one of them. And I was able to put those three things together: psychology, demonic activity, archetypal psychology, let's just put it this way, not the mainstream psychology, and also the aliens. And to me, those things became indistinguishable, undifferentiated. See, so that is that was so interesting to me. And like you mentioned right now, that you wake up and you already know all of that. I had a funny experience, and I think that I told you that, but I don't remember. Just I think it was about 6 months ago that I woke up, but I think it was 2:00 in the morning, and I knew that I couldn't go to sleep. Now someone is knocking at the door, just wants to bring some information, and I know that I won't be able to go to sleep. So I wake up and I make myself a cup of coffee at 2:00 in the morning, and I'm like, okay, come here, come onto the little red carpet right in front of me and start talking. And I knew that I saw the grays, and in my understanding, I did not actually know that how many different kinds of grays there are, but I have been seeing them from childhood, and they would always come and just tell me some information. I have no idea why, because I wouldn't be able to change anything about it, but they just say that don't be afraid of us, just like in the Bible, like this in the scripture, when they say, when the angels come to you, say, don't be afraid of us, right? And here's the same thing, because they can look in so many different ways, and we would be just totally scared out of our minds. And
it's because they come into your room at night where you're supposed to feel safe,
exactly.
And you're at your most vulnerable point, right? You're asleep, you're in your Jimmy Jams, and you're just, right?
No,
Yeah.
good point.
And then you have this intrusion. Like I had one night, I hadn't even fallen asleep yet, and I had this huge beam of light shoot through the house, and then I'm laying down and I look, and there's like a 4.5 foot gray like standing right there. I just lean over and touch him. It's just like, and I just went nope, and I rolled over.
See, sometimes you even choose not to talk about it. Oh, we have a question here. Sherry Punch is asking, I'm hearing the term the grace. Is this the color or shade of the entity being seen? Well, that would be the color, I believe, or the shade.
It varies.
I
It
guess
varies
it varies
depending on what they eat.
Oh,
that will change skin tone, apparently. And you have the tall whites as well, tall grays. There are different sorts of the grays. You can have the AI grays, the little holograms are probably between 2 and 3 feet, and then 3 feet and up, and some of them get really, really tall. Like I said, the one that I have is 4.5 feet.
You also hear stories about some people, report the grays. They always usually seem to communicate through telepathy, which I find interesting, being a parapsychologist, because, parapsychology is the scientific study of extrasensory perception, psychokinesis, and survival. So UFOs doesn't really fall under parapsychology, but it's interesting because when you talk about telepathy, well, that does fall under parapsychology under the ESP umbrella. But then there's other people that kind of report that the grays kind of seem like they're clones. You often hear that term that they're like clones, or that they're like very robotic.
Those are the AIs, like the holographic or little AI thingies. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what's your take? Like, do you think some of them are like living extraterrestrial biological entities, and some of them are like almost like AI, like you see the Tesla robot or whatever, almost something like that, but way more advanced?
Yes, absolutely. I know the one that I had in the house was definitely not AI. We have had small AIs in the house though, and they're just these little guys, and they actually seem more confused than anything, because when you walk in and you see them, it's just like almost like they don't know what to do. You try to communicate with them, it's like nope. Like it's kind of amusing. They just clamor right up, and it's just like, all right, Whereas I think the more sentient beings will communicate with you, and I think for me, like there was one night where I felt these hands come up behind my head, right, and it was weird because I had like Amelia just tap in and see what the heck was going on. Oh, something coming in from the back part of the house. This is where my freaking head is. So it made sense to me. And it's almost like there was like an exchange of information, because, it was quite gentle. It wasn't like aggressive. And then I woke up just knowing different things. I wrote things down. But the first time it ever happened to me, I wasn't so laid back about it. All I said was, touch me and I'll break your freaking arm. That's all I said. I was just like, don't freaking touch me.
That's good. That's good.
Well, but I didn't know. It's the first time I was ever aware of being touched like that. And you, like I said, you feel vulnerable. Now I'll just joke about it. I have a headache. Leave me alone. Just, don't feel like it. Tired. It's just a typical, but they're respectful. I just feel all the energy change, and the frequency in the house changes when they're close. Like I hear really loud frequencies, and when everything's quiet and I know I'm not having any experiences, it's just like no frequency at all. It's very, very quiet.
That is so incredibly interesting, because when I have encounters with them, they come and tell me things mainly about disasters, mainly about bad things that would happen. And I'm like, why can't you just tell me something positive that I need to know or would like to know?
Right.
So the last time when I saw them a few months ago, they would just come and tell me these horrible things that are happening in the world, and the hands like the blood is of the rulers of this world. It's just like stripping down. Like, okay, I understand that we all know what is happening in the world.
Right.
And they're like, okay. And they start walking away. And I said, hold on a minute. Like, I did not wake up like at 2 o'clock in the morning just for this. You come here and I need answers to some questions that I have.
Right.
And the interesting thing is that when I asked them questions that were bothering me for quite a long time, and I couldn't find the answer to them, they answered that, to the point that I started researching what they told me, that terminology that they told me. And that was one of the ancient civilizations in Siberia, in northern Russia, that were just found just a few decades ago, that they're ruins older than Stonehenge. And that is so interesting, because that was one of the civilizations, and they told me that you were one of them. That is so interesting. I never heard the word. I didn't know anything. And then I started researching, and it came. So they give you a lot of the information, and then they walked away. And the questions that I had in my mind, mind you, I was able to get, when I turn on the TV at night, to watch the podcast and listen to podcasts, and I turn it on, and weirdly enough, there was a video of I think it was 1989 on the Soviet TV, long time ago, and I don't even remember how. I never had it on my TV. I never had it in the search history, never. And all of a sudden it appears, and I fast forward it, like, why do I even need to see it? What kind of silliness is that? And then I stop on that particular moment when the hypnotherapist was giving this mass televised hypnotic session to people. Yeah, it was great. It was great. There are lots of healings happen at the time. However, the question that came up, that one of the people in the audience would just get up and ask him a question. And that was exactly the same question that I had in my mind. And I'm like, I cannot believe that. And now I have the answer. And the answer that hypnotherapist, he was a psychotherapist as well, and he said, that is a gift. That's not a curse. So that was the answer to many of my questions.
Russia is an extraordinary place when it comes to ancient civilizations. I mean, there's a strong belief that the cradle of civilization actually began in Russia because of the pyramid that they just found there. But also,
Michelle,
Russia,
that's why you define elegance. I love you so much. I love you.
Thank you. But they were one of the first countries to disclose. They wanted to beat the United States. They were one of the first countries to disclose about all of their extraterrestrial contacts. Well, for the most part, for their Air Force pilots, they released that information. And do you know that in the 80s, Russian scientists would sort of like laugh when, all these countries are trying to go into space and make contact with extraterrestrials and do these different things, because Russian scientists like, no, we don't have to do that. We just call them. And people are like, what? So they would go to this Air Force base.
That's what Russians do.
They do.
We don't go anywhere. People come to us. Everything comes here.
And they did. Russian scientists were doing a version of CE5s back in the 70s and 80s. And the ETs would come to them. And they would have these interactions.
Russian orders ET.
See, I know. I'm like, see, right there, we're already doing it wrong. So there's a lot. There's a lot of ancient stuff there, and extraterrestrials definitely coexisted with ancient people. Let's face it, the ancient people would emulate what they saw, what they respected. Look at hieroglyphs, petroglyphs. Look at ancient monuments and statues. And I mean, you just go back even in the Bible. Look at the Book of Enoch. Look at Ezekiel and the Ezekiel's wheels, and just look at Leonardo da Vinci disappearing for 2 weeks and coming back even more gifted than normal with all of this ridiculous stuff. Look at Tesla, who had communications when he built his version of this ghost box sort of thing that was based on his findings, and he was in communication with voices that were coming in from space. Come on.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then also the Sanskrit, which is the sacred language
Yes.
of the Hindus, it is
Yes.
also has the pra language was the ancient, considered really the ancient archaic Russian language, which was not Russian, of course, at the time, but it was archaic Slavic language because one of the scientists that came to Russia in the past century, somewhere to the north, because there's different dialects of Russian, and he started asking people, which language are you speaking? And they're like, Russian, of course, we live here. This is Russian.
Right.
And he said, this is not Russian. He said, this is, in fact, Sanskrit. And he was so blown away. He said, you are speaking in Sanskrit.
That's
So if we
amazing.
look at the time of the civilization existing in the north of Russia, and when with the ice age, people started moving south because nobody in their right mind would actually move north when it is so cold there. You go in the countries when it is warm, and they moved down, and they finally went to India, right? And they have their ancient epos, Mahabharata, with all of the fightings that is happening on the UFO crafts in the space, right? If we look at that, and it was already written down in Sanskrit, which is the ancient archaic Russian version of the language, then we will just it just blows us away, our minds away, right? And I'm so glad that Michelle that you mentioned that, and thank you so much for giving it credit. I appreciate it.
Oh, pleasure. I like to just put it all out there where credit is due, and there's so much out there that people have no clue. They really don't. It's all there. It's all in ancient texts. It's all in out of place artifacts and ancient civilizations. And what we know now is only different because it changed during Roswell or after Roswell. Then everything became secret.
I've actually heard people talk about like going back to Dr. Gallagher's belief, like thinking that aliens and demons are linked together. But I've heard stories about, for example, like we always hear in the Bible about Michael the Archangel.
Yes.
And I've heard one theory proposed that the names of those types of angels, Michael the Archangel and Gabriel, is that they're not necessarily like one being, but there was theories going around that it was like a star fleet of, so Michael's army was like a star fleet of UFOs and spaceships that, came to kind of help out. So it is really fascinating when you kind of, like you said, look at it from different lenses, from a religious perspective and an anthropological perspective and a sociological perspective. But it's certainly a phenomena that's reported, all over the world, both, UFO sightings, obviously, and alien abductions as well.
Well, do you know what a real archangel actually looks like? I'm gonna show you.
Show it to us.
Right there. Right here. Hold on. I think right guy on the right here.
On the right.
Does that not look like it could be Ezekiel's wheel? Because
Right, that's what
they say it is.
Right, exactly. So whose drawing is this?
This is just something right on, like I've just went on Google Images to find it. This is, you can find this stuff pretty much anywhere. Yeah, and this
looks like seraphims.
Well, the seraphims are right up here.
The fiery ones.
Okay. Yeah. So
interesting.
I don't know. So would you look at that as extraterrestrial, or would you look at that as, it comes back to us perceiving, maybe our conditioning of what they're supposed to look like. At the end of the day, I don't think we really do know 100%, because like any being from other realms, I imagine, or even a lot of extraterrestrials can make you see what they want you to see or how they want you to see it. I think it's a full mindset thing.
Yes, because if we go back to the Bible, this is what we see in the ancient scriptures, even in the Old Testament, especially in the Old Testament. What happens is that they say, "Do not fear," and because they can take up different shells, so to say, they look differently, they appear to us as humans. And if we look back to Greek ancient philosophy, and we would just see Zeus appearing as a dove, right? Or as a dove. It's not a dove, as a swan. He was never a dove.
Sure,
Yeah, appearing as a
projection.
swan. And he would be taking totally different appearances in order to achieve his goals.
Well, how hard? I mean, I would imagine it would take a lot of energy to actually shapeshift. I would think it would be a lot easier for them just to project an image to us little humans to see what it is they want us to see, you know. But getting back to Dr. Gallagher's, perception, a lot of people believe that extraterrestrial beings, and let's say, for example, if you saw a demonic entity, it could look like a big draconian or a reptilian, for sure. If you
Mhm.
saw an angel, they would look like a light being. I
Mm.
mean, for me, light beings, because light beings have been here, they're just all light. All you're seeing is this light with some sort of a humanoid sort of shape, you know?
Yeah,
Angels and
no,
archangels. Sorry,
no,
I'm
no,
sorry,
no.
Doctor.
No, you're right. It's fascinating the different
Yeah.
entities that get reported. Like you said, sometimes it's beings of light. Sometimes they've seen different cultures or races within the extraterrestrial world, like the reptilians and the greys, and
Yeah.
other people report seeing certain apparitions and angels. They say like the drawings that we see of them, these beautiful like human like kind of entities, apparently they're not like that at all, almost like the pictures like you were just showing, like it's
Okay.
totally different than what we perceive it. So
But there are probably so many different kinds that we have to understand that, because the angels and actually archangels that I saw, and I go the inductive method sometimes, so they would just come and just tell me their names, and I wouldn't have any ideas what it was actually, and I would just look it up, and sure enough, somewhere in the one mythology or religious current or another, it would be
Mm.
an archangel, and
Mhm.
they never had any wings on them, but their eyes would
Right.
be very interesting, almost like transparent, as if they're looking through you. But I
Right.
never seen them having any wings whatsoever.
Right.
hmm.
Right. I think at this point, they is it the church that maybe may had these winged sort of beings. I go back to, mind you, ancient Sumerian texts on Anunnaki. They were winged beings. So
Mm.
Exactly.
you're
Yeah. And
going
then the
back.
Renaissance. We're
The
talking
and
about
yeah,
the
and the ancient
Renaissance among those
Sumerians kings
paintings.
goes back like 450,000 years ago. Like that's quite a long time. And a lot of their depictions are reptilians, and then you have these other Anunnaki type that have wings. Some of the reptilians have wings. You know, I think that a lot of it has to do with conditioning. I mean, you go back even into the Old Testament, you're getting into, gods, right? They talk about gods, not a
Mm.
singular God. So, did we have extraterrestrial beings coming down and playing God? Or were they just taking bits and pieces of different cultures like anything else? It's just like any conquering country or conquering race that comes in, they amalgamate as much as they can of that
Mm.
country to incorporate it into their own. So it's easier it's a more peaceful blending of the cultures, right? So if you're looking at it that way, I mean, I think the New Testament takes out a lot of that. But there's a lot, I mean, pre-flood dates. I mean, how many floods? Every 12,000 years there are floods. In the Ice Age, there's just a lot that we need to factor in that's logical of ancient civilizations and what they deemed as gods.
Yeah, but with preconditioning, actually, this is what happens, that the religious currents, they shut our minds and mouth, and we don't talk about it because who said it? Carl Jung said that the religion, the mainstream religion, is actually not allowing us to talk about things, and we're so afraid. We have been so conditioned that we're afraid to talk about something that would be considered paranormal, and paranormal is not a part of the church. But if you just like look at the New Testament, right? Even New Testament, the Revelation, it's like it was written probably by someone who was just doing shroomies, right? It's like the heavy influence, like writing something like that. What's the difference between that experience, right, and the experience that you, Michelle, now have, for example, right? Waking up at night and you have all of that and you're writing it all down. What's the difference between those two? Can be the same bizarre experience, it's
Well, the Vatican is sitting with an alien skull in their archives. So they know they exist,
they do.
for sure. And I mean, when Russia redid the Kremlin, and they did a full renovation, went underground, they found this whole other like ancient part of an ancient town, and they also found one. It's like this stuff exists, but I think what it is with conditioning, I believe in a creator. I don't believe in religion as the organization at all. I'm a spiritual person. I believe in a creator. I believe that creator is not going to limit she or himself to one little planet in our solar system. They're almighty. They've created a solar system. Why would they not? They've created a universe. Why would they just limit themselves here? We've already got all kinds of evidence that shows that ancient cultures existed long before us. We are just round 3, 4, 5, whatever the case may be. We're not the first. We're not going to be the last, and that's just what it is. A religion, I believe, is a way of conditioning and control. I mean, how should you control 7 billion people? You have to have rules in place, but I think
it's like Karl Marx said, how much is the opium for the masses, right? What is the price of the opium?
No, I know. I know. But I mean, you just look at the Book of Enoch. There's a reason that these things were left out. Ezekiel made it in there, which is pretty cool. But Enoch, if you really dissect the story of Enoch, essentially, Enoch was taken up, and when they say, well, he was shown, the future in the palm of his hand. It sounds to me like a little bit like something like this, like a phone, shown the future, shown everything within a palm of your hand. And it's believed that he was essentially, assisting in hybridization. This is the most polite way to put it. And, and then decided one day, no, I'm just not coming back. And his son's like, what do you mean you're not coming back? Because no, I'm just not coming back. And he became the angel Metatron. I mean, so there's a lot there why was that left out? It's because I think it sounds a little bit too much like, you
can control people this way. You just can't control.
So let's take it a step further. I had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, amazing guest. And he was talking about, the Nephilim. And I mean, the Bible teaches about the Nephilim. So why was the Smithsonian throwing the bones of giants in the ocean? Why were they hiding things? Why were they not talking about this? I mean, there's experiences still happening. I think they back in, what was it? Was it in Iraq? Was it in Afghanistan? They came across apparently a giant, like the troops did. This is recent times. This is a bunch of men saying, hell no. That thing is huge, So this is a recent sighting. They're out there. But I mean, why are they not talking about hybridization? They tell you that, and I'm always delicate about how I put this, and because it's your show, I want to be just as delicate because I don't want to get us flagged. But okay, we have the all-powerful creator. He's out there, right? He's an etheric being. He's out there. Then we have a human little Mary, and Mary is pregnant by an etheric being. Does that not make Jesus a hybrid of some sort? Like I just asked the guest, I'm just going to bend your thinking a little bit. Just work with me. Just going to bend it. And he looked at me and he went, "You're absolutely right." Thank you. Because this is essentially, they're saying that you have this mighty, powerful being and this human being, and God is not human. And you have a creation that comes in from a human, he's only half human. So that means you're half something else.
But the thing is that it was normalized for us here through the religion. It was normalized and explained it to us. So that's why how we eat it with, right? But if we look further, if we actually open up our mind, which the mainstream religion is just closing up our minds, we're not allowed to think. And I remember, I'm not saying that I also believe in God, but through years of going to church, I realized that that is just the means of controlling of our minds.
Of
And every
course.
time that I would say something, and I'm a Bible scholar, I know the translations, I know the language, I know a lot about the history of the church, and not just the Christian church, but religions of the world. And if I would just mention something, I would just immediately be shut down and not even be allowed to talk, because I could contaminate the minds of other people. But like you mentioned, there were gods. If we look at all of the translations, it was not only one God. There were the gods that came in a plural form, and they were Elohim in Hebrew,
right.
and they
That's
were
right.
plural. So we have to be able to understand that where we come from, ask questions. But the thing is that we're not allowed to ask questions. We could be excluded from the part of the society where we belong, and we have to belong. We have to think the same. And that is why what is the Catholic Church? Catholic Church was
But they're
created
the
as
newest. Why is it the newest, the Christianity, which was like 300 AD, and you have religions are much, much older than that? Why do they get to dictate? Go back to Gnosticism. The Gnostics were looking at the stars and talking about archons. They fully knew everything. They knew archons were extraterrestrial, and those who came after them would probably have called them demons, but they've never stepped foot here. But yet they could control humanity without ever stepping foot on in this dimension or this space. Like, that's pre-Christianity. That's where the control, I think, really started coming in. Maybe like the Muslim faith was very hardcore as well, but Gnosticism and the Cathars and the Essenes, it was not about control like that. It was about knowledge and spirituality, and they knew. They knew, the people of the time knew that they had everything the answers were in the stars. Look at the pyramids.
That's true, but then we have to go back to the 3rd century AD now, with Emperor Constantine, who wanted to unite his kingdom, his many numerous lands, and he said, "Okay, in order to unite all of us, we have to have one faith." So he created essentially Catholicism, collection
thanks to his mother,
religion, thanks to his mother. Exactly.
Yeah, because he didn't believe in anything.
Right. So he just decided, okay, now we're going to choose Christianity.
That's right.
And what is it going to look like? So thanks to him, it looks what it looks right now.
Yeah.
And that was to control the masses.
That's right.
So to say, yeah.
That's right. But, in the end, it's all out there. The ancients knew it.
This is Yana's favorite part. You're listening to Science and the Paranormal.
Science, bring the science. I know.
She always laughs. She loves when I do this. You're listening to Science and the Paranormal, and we're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Radio Paranormal Radio Network, from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 105.3 and 107.7 FM, and also
exactly. Dr. Elliott, you're falling asleep already. It's late there. Guys, you've been talking about all these aliens and the sightings and everything. And
I know.
I might as well move to Canada. What am I doing here?
I'm gonna have nightmares going to bed.
We can have them anywhere, but the interesting part is that the UFO sightings normally take place in the hilly area, in the mountains and the deserted areas. So we have lots of mountains here, and also in the Baku in Azerbaijan, where I grew up, we could see them actually through our through the balcony. We just go on the balcony, and our home was sitting on sort of a hill, and you could see everything, the Bay of the Caspian Sea, and you could see And it would be just silently coming through. At the beginning, we didn't know what it was. So we just hypothesized that it would be some alien aircraft. Because
Russia has one specific lake up there, and the name eludes me. It's very, very deep. And the Russian Navy, they were performing an exercise on this lake, and they went underwater and came across these aquatic beings and scared the hell out of them. They came out of there, and that was the end of the exercise. And it was off limits, that lake, for a really long time, again in Russia.
Interesting. Yeah, Russia has a lot of
Baikal.
Russia has a lot of like interesting paranormal stuff, and it's unfortunate that government relations are so poor because they don't really share a whole lot of stuff. Even if you don't go into the deeper stuff like UFOs and aliens and monsters and stuff like that, but even just their parapsychology studies that Russia does, like they had Nina Kulingina. Yeah, psychokinesis. And, when the Americans went over there to kind of do their tests, like they weren't allowed to go to the laboratory. They had to do it in a hotel room and things like that. It would be very interesting if they were able to share more information.
Because they have it. That's the thing.
Crazy stuff in Russia.
Like do you know that the Russian scientists, where Americans were doing studies on DNA, and they said, well, 10% is what we're going to study. The rest is like sort of junk. Mm-hmm. And Russian scientists said, no. There's all this extra stuff. Let's see what it can do. There's got to be something in there. And that's where they started learning about which part of the DNA controlled or had to do with clairvoyance, clairsentience, all of those other senses. Those are Russian scientists that work on that.
Mm. What's your thoughts on, we're hearing stuff about, is the RN negative blood type?
I'm an RH negative blood type.
Sarah actually. She had to get the shot or whatever. So she always jokes that she's like a alien human hybrid.
What's doesn't have any monkey proteins, guys?
That's true. They don't know
we have a blue blood.
They don't know where it came from. Essentially, it's part of the rhesus monkey. Essentially, if you think about it, the missing link goes from, these prehistoric beings to all of a sudden we're here. So we're all hybrids of sorts. But there's a belief at about 40,000 years ago that another race of ET, like, so if Anunnaki was messing around here, either now there are some reptilians who are believed to have been the ones instrumental in giving us the RH negative. So if that's the case, some branches of the reptilians sort of look at us as descendants, or like part of their ancestry because they fudged on some stuff. The rest of us, not RH negative. I'm going to try to be delicate. Is believe that they were intervened
Michelle.
with.
No one is perfect. Not everyone is perfect like us.
Okay, we'll cut a spade a spade. Going back 40,000 years ago, you had brown-eyed, brown-haired people. All of a sudden, you end up with green eyes, blue eyes, red hair, blonde hair, and RH negative blood type. I mean, both my parents are RH negative blood types. In a time when, I'm aging myself a bit, but at a time, like, the doctor was just amazed. Like, how the hell did you two find each other? Like, you just didn't see it because it might only be at that time 3% of the world's population. It's not the rarest blood in the world, though. But, they have the golden blood. There's only about maybe 400 people in the world that have that. But, so somewhere along the lines, this happened, and we ended up with this negative blood type, and a lot of like really famous people are RH negative, royal family, things like that. So, and they believe those are blue bloods, reptilians. Just saying.
Well, so interesting. The
blue blood because of the predominance of the copper in the blood.
See, but they'll tell you.
Well, it's
responsible for that.
It's interesting because we've seen like a mix of cultures and races, even here on Earth. Like, for example, Sarah, my wife, has Métis in her, and Métis is a mix of European, mostly French, and then indigenous.
Me too.
So
Yeah.
so it would be,
Iroquois. Yeah.
if you have these extraterrestrials that come down here and they can take like the shape of a human form or whatnot, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that there's breeding, or you talk to alien abductees and they talk about a breeding program.
It's happening. Your neighbor could be a total half and half, and you wouldn't know it. But do you know, in it is believed, Edgar Casey actually believed that Atlantis, by the way, was because I'm going to be tackling this, but Casey wrote a book on it, and I believe that it was over 1 million years old, and it wasn't just an island. It was just like there was a lot more to it. But do you know it's believed that the true Atlanteans, Edgar Casey always said, were the Redskins. They believed that the true royals, Atlantean elite, were the indigenous people from the different cultures around the world, the Redskin. So I thought that was very interesting because you brought it up, and I'm thinking, you know what? So there's something to that as well. But now you're going back to brown-haired, brown-eyed people, which evolved over time. But initially, Atlanteans were said to be a mix of everything.
That's fascinating.
It is.
And we do have a lot of people kind of channeling Atlanteans and coming up with a lot of interesting information. Of course, we can't check the facts, but it's very interesting what they say.
If anything, it leaves more room for research. Initially, apparently, we were fudged with to be like a slave race, just to mine for the ancient Sumerian kings and the ancient Anunnaki people. Wayne always laughs because he goes, "Oh, they positive was a slave race." Yeah, okay, whatever. But I do think that somewhere along the line that the RH negative, it's not very old on the grand scheme of time on this planet.
Yeah.
If it's 30,000 years, that's halfway to the last ice age.
Now, Michelle, do you know anything about the abductees and the research that was done on them, if at all, if they had predominantly Rh negative blood?
Yes.
Oh,
apparently, yes. Apparently, now, not that, anybody can be contacted, can be an experiencer, anybody. You don't have to be an Rh negative. But apparently, statistically speaking, and this isn't my research, you can go just to check out, talk to Joe. Talk to ICAR, because they've talked to over, I think he's got 40,000 contactee on his organizations throughout the many years. But it would appear that most of them are Rh negative blood.
Wow.
And they go through lineages. They go through your family lines. They will abduct entire family lines. So, Yana, if you have had contactee, if you're a contactee, chances are so are members of your family, your grandparents, great grandparents, and it goes along. I know my family line, and I know why they would be considered, why they would be taken.
Well, that's so interesting. I guess it is a little too late for me to proclaim through the radio all over the world that I'm not Rh negative.
So a
little too late.
But even like the positive lines, of course, any contactee, if chances are, if you were being contacted, chances are that members of your family will have been too. And this is why I did the research with my own parents. I'm just like, okay, I need to know what's going on, and I sort of left it at that. And then, I talked to my own children who are all adults and said, okay. And I found out that, yes, they had experiences.
Now, do they contact, so to say, their own, Michelle? Like you said, that the bloodline, that they watch the bloodline and they have their own records. It's not how can they possibly know? Of course, our framework of understanding is not quite encompass everything that is happening up there and how they operate on their own level. But could that be that those contactees are actually those that could be the hybrids, or could have their own DNA, because we have already, the science established that we already have alien DNA. And we have, by the way, the lizard DNA, right? We do have the lizard, the snake DNA. What is this? This word always runs away from me.
Draconian?
Not draconian. What is the
Reptilians?
reptilians?
That's
Oh, that word.
draconians are reptilian.
This
They're
is
just
unbelievable.
bigger.
Yeah, but the thing is that we do have reptilian DNA, and the science just recently discovered, I think at the end of the 2023, that humans, reptilians, and birds, we do have DNA in common.
Sure.
And that is so interesting.
Throw the Greys into the mix, and now you've been hybridized again.
That's crazy.
We can hypothesize about all of that. Yeah, it blows
your mind
minds.
to look at everything. Yeah. And it does make you wonder, like you said, with the Anunnaki. I was trying to actually try and find an expert in the Anunnaki, because I thought that would have made a really interesting presentation for this year's at the 2024 Paranormal Symposium. Unfortunately, most of the original people that have studied the tablets and the scriptures,
long gone,
that believe that it was linked to extraterrestrial, are gone. So now you've got experts in the Anunnaki, but they don't really subscribe to that theory. So I was kind of disappointed in that.
Experts are hard.
I did get Chris Rakowski though, as a guest speaker from Winnipeg, Manitoba. He's going to come talk to us about alien abductions.
Right.
He's written a couple books on it, so that should be really interesting.
It will be, yeah.
Speaking of the 2024 Paranormal Symposium, Yana had made a donation to us, and Michelle has decided to come back as a gold sponsor again with the Paranormal Symposium for a second year. So next year I'm going to look at trying to bring you down if you're available, possibly as a guest speaker.
Yes.
Please make donations. Yes, so we push the science forward, connecting science and the paranormal.
Yes. So Michelle's going to join us again as a gold sponsor, which is really exciting. So
yes,
it's good. It's good. We've got a few new sponsors this year. Because when I was approaching and my planning team was approaching everyone, we talked about all our sponsors from last year, and obviously one of them was the Outer Realm.
We loved being a part of it. It was great.
So this year we partnered with Paraflex. We partnered with Boxing Rock Brewing Company down in Shelburne. They make a special beer for the Shag Harbor UFO.
Very nice.
Expo, so they're going to do a special run of extra beer for us with the UFO logo on it. So I got to get one for my office. It'll be hard. Like, I'll probably drink it maybe and just keep the
Highly expected.
Yeah, well, but it's great, and I'm really looking forward to Chris Rakowski, because I've followed him since I started investigating the paranormal. Like when I was 16 years old, I used to follow the Canadian UFO survey, and I've reported UFO sightings and stuff to him. So it'll be really cool to have him come and talk about the alien abduction phenomena.
Right. I think I think it's great that you have someone who's going to talk about it, because I think right now, because of all the talk of disclosure, and the United States apparently, from what I've read, have bailed out of disclosure. Just saying. So all of a sudden it's like, no, we're not doing it. But people right now want to know what's going on. And I think because there are more platforms talking about it, people becoming a little bit more comfortable in discussing it. I think it's harder for them to come to terms with the fact that there's something otherworldly that is invading my life. Like, they don't all look at it as friendly. I think media has really portrayed it as something aggressive, and it doesn't need to be. I can tell you that, once I got over my own fears of it, and as a child, I was like, you never had fear of anything as a kid. Like, you would look to the stars all the time, You were always outside looking up at the stars and waiting. And I was like, God, I was such a weird kid. I'm a weird ass adult, and I was a weird ass little kid too. But anyway,
nothing weird. You are normal.
Yeah,
you are among the normal people. We're all normal.
Normal is overrated, I think. Just a little abnormal, maybe. But
that's in our understanding. You're among highly normal people.
Oh my gosh, thank you. But I still had to, when I realized that things were still happening to me, I had to get over my own fear of it. And I think if people can get over their fear of it, they might be able to, I say, embrace it. I don't believe they personally are here to cause a lot of pain and angst. I think we'll be conditioned to that. You start looking at things like Project Bluebeam. That's going to be a lot of theatrics, and to instill fear. And this started in the Roswell days. It wasn't like that before. Just go back and look up your history with all of this stuff. It wasn't like that before. And once you can get past that and realize that, a lot of these people are getting messages of hope, and people are being healed. People are coming back with like amazing abilities, and it's not all fear. I think if you have fear, it could be one of, three things. One is just you're fearful. It could be my lab. You're being taken by our own, or it could just be that you're getting up there and you're fighting like a mad person or a mad dog, and they're not going to let you cause havoc on a ship. It's going to be like, no. But when people get, through some hypnosis and they realize, like, yes, I was panicky. And I the last thing I remember is being on a table and seeing people around me. And then under hypnosis and doctors realizing, like, you've been healed. You had cancer. You don't anymore. And I'm not saying that's the case all the time, but I do know that having people who have been taken by military on the show, even when they're discussing their experiences, everything, some of the things that they're saying, like the type of tables, the type of environment, lines on the floor, and this is something that's more human, because a lot of people who have been aboard real extraterrestrial ships aren't seeing any of that. They're not even seeing walls for the most part, let alone lines on the floors and doors that go, So,
Yana, you do hypnosis. Have you ever done like any hypnosis on a client that has recanted like an alien abduction story?
I have not. No, unless you want to do one on me, guys. Who knows? Who knows what happened in the past? Who knows? No, I have not.
What are some common themes that abductees have said about like their abduction experience? Like you hear some talk about like the Greys kind of allude to the fact that they're worried about like our nuclear weapons, and they kind of check on us and things like that. But what are some other themes that we're hearing from multiple people from different cultures all across the world?
Hybridization is a real big one.
Another,
that's a big one. They're apparently the collectors out there. That's what they do. But again, who knows? I think you have people who get very fearful because they're being taken out through walls. And I know someone who was and woke up, and they're like, all of a sudden, I'm being taken out through a closed window.
That would be scary,
Well, it defies the laws of physics, But somehow this is happening, and then he grabbed.
Speaking about Peter Pan, guys, Peter Pan also was greenish, right? Peter Pan, no, he was abducting everyone through the window.
I know this person, so I'm thinking, was the window open? They're like, no. I went through. There was like started going through, and then he just grabbed on to the side and resisted. And got angry and kicked. And all of a sudden he goes, because he was up almost at the ceiling. So he was just coming up at the top part of the window, and he just dropped. He just dropped. And he goes, thankfully, I had a king size bed, and that's pretty much what I dropped on. But, because it was a very surreal feeling, and he didn't it, like, obviously it frightened him. In fact, the next day he was questioning, because he just kind of walked around and looked at how the dynamics of it could be. But the interesting part is he saw his fingerprints on the top part of the window, back
Wow.
from the inside. So it's like, well, how is that from up there?
That kind of, just reaffirmed to him that it was a real incident that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. But people get the smells. They'll smell like that sulfur smell. You get people in demonology who say, oh, that's a demon. Well, those are extraterrestrials as well. And they'll hear little popping sounds or like crackling sounds. A lot of demonics hear that. People who have demonic attachments claim to hear that. Well, people who have had contact experience or abduction experiences also claim to have heard that. Sleep paralysis. Now, sleep paralysis, that's where it sort of gets funky as well, because there was a parapsychologist. I actually got this just for you, Elliott. 1 second. I'm going to go and pick this up. This one's for you. 1 minute. Sleep paralysis. So, in the paranormal, we call it the hag syndrome, right?
Yeah.
It's the feeling of pressure on the chest and somebody sitting on your chest. Okay. So in ufology, I mean, technically speaking, sleep paralysis is known as the waking nightmare. I've had it happen to me twice in my life, and I was not impressed with it. I mean, you literally can't move, but if you force yourself to move even like a baby finger, you'll come out of it. It's weird how it happens. But what was fascinating to me, and different countries in the world will have different analogies of what it's supposed to do. So the story that I came across was, where is he? Okay, here it is. And this is here in Canada. Alien abduction shares similarities to sleep paralysis. Canadian physicist, and I don't know if you've heard of this man, Jean-Christophe Terrillon.
No, I haven't actually.
Okay. So he was doing research in Japan, reported the following. This guy's a scientist. He doesn't believe that evil spirits, or people, he doesn't believe that evil spirits jump into people, do things like that, or torment people. So he did an experiment on sleep paralysis. And he said once a week, he sensed a threatening presence, something very evil beside his bed while he was paralyzed. His ears rang, weight pressed down on his chest as he struggled to breathe. Felt an intense pressure in his head as if he was going to explode. Sometimes he found himself transported upward and looking down at his body. He even felt as though he was hurled through a long tunnel. So abductees have claimed this, unable to move, like when they see gray coming or an ET coming at them, unable to move, buzzing sounds, difficulty breathing, pressure to the chest, flashing lights, feeling of floating around the room, and seeing figures in the room. So
when you say it like that too, it almost kind of reminds you of like a near-death experience too.
See, it could be right.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I don't know.
A lot of those characteristics also kind of match like somebody's near-death experience.
Well, you're bridging all of these experiences, because people who can have out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, bridge out with the paranormal and extraterrestrial contact or abduction, they're almost mirroring one another. So you tell me what's going on. You're the science guy and girl. You guys tell me what's going on.
Well, the science has not even gotten close to understanding what it is, and we explain everything with all this phenomena that we are hoping that we're explaining correctly in order to avoid the parapsychological terminology. But if we look at all of this phenomena, psychology does explain it through a certain lens, which is parapsychology, So where is the science? what kind of science are we using to explain something? Because in my practice, I have already seen so many things that have been described by the mainstream medicine, mainstream psychology, that is, in fact, has the exact equivalent in parapsychology,
Right.
but it is under a different name.
Right.
Now, there are so many people. We all come from different perspectives, right? Whatever, and we've been conditioned by different societies.
Mhm.
So, whatever the culture also you come from, that's how you understand everything. By being a scientist, we would think that many scientists, they don't believe in God, when in fact they do. And some that did not believe in God, they come to the understanding that there is something divine out there. And why? Because they have lived long enough, because they have seen more than they did before. They have more experience. They can actually come to the conclusion that there's more to the eye than we know. And the Tesla, for example, right, like you mentioned, they all credited the spirit world. He was a scientist, but many scientists credit the spirit world, their intuition. Let's just talk about psychological terms, intuition, for having all of those insights. Where do those insights come from, if not from the paranormal realm, right? From the outer space, so to say. And that's when mythology comes. That's where the literature comes into play, and also religious interpretations, also science. So the occurrence of the sleep paralysis, just as it is in the scientific terminology, just the phenomena that needed to be explained to the population. That's all. Because of the different terminology, the meaning of it and the essence of it, that doesn't change.
Yeah,
In my
agreed.
understanding.
I agree.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting that the scientist went as far as to do this experiment and had these incredible experiences that left him really shaken. So they didn't specify afterwards, so how he felt about anything illogical, after that. Was he a believer? I can tell you, sleep paralysis is not fun. It's happened twice. It happened twice within a 3-week time frame, and I can tell you the time that it happened. One was during the day, and one was at night. And I was having something coming over the house at the time. This is what my Burlington house, and it was a 2 stories, and something came over the house, and it was doing this pretty regularly, and the whole house would just go, it would shake like this, and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm going, well, I know it's not a plane, so I knew it wasn't a plane because it wouldn't have been right over the house the whole time, like up. It wasn't like, I would know if I look outside, I don't see anything, but I know that it's obviously close enough to shake the house.
Now, Michelle, if that happened to you several times, now you know the symptomatology. Like, what am I talking about? Symptoms. Yeah, the symptoms of what's happening, right? If you know all the signs already, can you express or use your free will in order to say, yo, you're not coming here this time and leave me alone? So would they listen?
The ones that I have encountered are very respectful because I have basically said no, enough.
Look at that. Look at that. So before he came to torment you, right? And now being respectful because you said so.
But I thought,
That's interesting. Yeah.
we have to look at it this way. I took that as them tormenting me. That was my own fear. Once I made peace with the fact that, look, okay, you're having these experiences. Some of these experiences are happening in the middle of the day. Like, we had a house like next door to the manor that we had, and right in the middle of the day, some wave came through a very wide space, hit the house next door. That vibration or this thing went through the house, our dining room windows, and these windows, bear in mind that the walls in this house are like 3 feet thick. It was 72. It was very, very solid house. It's hard to shake the house. But
They
the
don't make
window,
them like that anymore.
no, they
Right.
don't. But the windows rattled like, and then this wave went through the house, hit the adjacent room. Those windows rattled. So we found out later that evening, because back then we were doing our radio show out of an actual radio station, and we got a call from the neighbor who was in China. She says the chimney is going like crazy. There's smoke coming out of the chimney. Can you go check it out? We ran over, and a car hit the side of the house earlier that day, and we're like, this thing happened. So whatever it was, this car was trying to avoid. It was a huge intersection and a huge corner lot. There was no reason for that car to go anywhere near that house because of the amount of space at that intersection, which he came in off the road, and it looked like he was trying to avoid something because of the tire marks, which is sort of like this. And he did this full circle, hit the house, and left. That's the best part. Left. But yeah. So I don't know. Like
Wayne says it rattles the dining room windows through the
Yeah.
house and out through the parlor
Parlor
windows, vibrating them as well. Wow.
yeah. Yeah. It was an incredible experience. But to realize that the only explanation we had for this is this driver. I mean, I don't know. Could he have been drinking? He had a really wide berth. I think he could have made it. It was a big road, There was no real reason. It really did look like a panic thing. So we were just sort of like, okay, we can only go based on what we experienced. And that was one of many things, and things are still experienced to this day. I think with part of my own evolution, because I do feel that we evolve through these experiences, is the type of frequencies that I hear now. If I hear a song, I'll hear the frequency in it before I hear it. But like, I can completely separate the song, hear the frequency. I hear frequencies constantly. I hear choirs, I hear chanting, I hear Viking stuff, I hear flutes, pianos, at any given time of the day. Like when my mother was passing, it was weird because I was hearing what sounded like Gregorian chants and like almost like beautiful choirs. And
Wow.
I found out from my sister, a friend of my mom's, a real dear friend of hers, was a psychic medium. And she said, the angels were singing for you. And my sister kind of went, yeah, right. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's happening. Because I was hearing freaking angel or like choirs for 2 freaking weeks.
That is so interesting, Michelle, that you mentioned that, because one time I also had that experience. I would just hear the choir all the time. It's a choir. I put my head on the pillow and immediately I hear that. And then I get up and there's nothing. And then I put my head down again.
I had it all the time.
And
I'd
then
be
I asked the
driving, I could hear
question.
it.
I would ask a question just like that, the answer come to me.
Yeah.
And I would hear the answer, well, nobody was around. That's the angels of singing to you. But somehow they said the fallen angels singing to you. I had no idea what the fallen angels were at the time. Like, why would they be fallen? But that was a beautiful choir singing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I'd be driving during the day, I could hear it. Like for me, stuff is pretty regular. At night, it's a bit different, but I think it's also dimensional. Like, are we tapping in? Are we getting some kind of a dimensional bleed through?
You are tapping a lot. Yes, you're tapping. You can hear all that.
Mm-hmm. But I hear more of it now, which is interesting. And I hear little things like bells. I hear little bells of different sorts, like gongs, bells, and apparently that's something otherworldly trying to make a connection. The man, it was terrible. Wayne would look at me like I had 2 heads. Like, did you just hear that? He goes, honestly, what? He goes, it's like a little chime. It's like a chime. I hear chimes in this house everywhere. And he goes, no, I don't hear any of it. I'm like, ugh. I thought I was losing my freaking mind. And now it's just more of it. So losing my mind. And here we are. Yeah.
Perhaps you're gaining it more. It's not the losing your mind. Perhaps you're gaining. You're able to step into a different realm. Just when all of us, we try all of the spiritual exercises in order to be able to do that, right? You are able to do that just subconsciously, unconsciously, that bam, I'm there, bam, I'm there. And like you can hear everything. Perhaps
can.
you are Edgar Casey in an awakened state. Perhaps that. Why don't you ask themselves more questions? Be more like a Russian, for Pete's sake. Be more like a Russian. Order
I'm gonna stick
the answer
Yana
to
on
come to
you.
you.
I'm gonna sick Yana on you. Give me my
Yeah,
answer. Give me my answer. No,
exactly.
but no,
Yeah.
I think it's just part of I do believe part of extraterrestrial contact is to evolve us. I believe it's to make us remember who we are. We are a species with amnesia. We do not recall where we come from and the abilities that we have. We've been dumbed down. We have stuff in our food. We have, like just all kinds of stuff. Fluoride, for example.
Yeah.
I think it's been there to subdue us. And you look at children. Elliott, look at your little firecracker. I mean, she knows what's going on.
Oh
Kids,
gosh, does she ever?
right? Kids know what's going on because they haven't had enough of that yet. So it's not corrupted, like there's no conditioning aside from what they're taught. And I think if parents teach them to keep up with those abilities, then you see them take it into adulthood. But we need to remember who we are. And I think a lot of these visits for many people, I can speak for myself, of course, and people that I've spoken to, a lot of it is about teaching us. And those are the messages. Remember who you are.
Or find out. And wake up, find out, and ask questions. Don't just believe everything that is being told to you and conditioned. Just ask questions.
Yes.
And that's the incredible message. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Pleasure.
It was absolutely fantastic talking to you. And I hope that we can see you again on our fantastic show, Science and Paranormal. And by the way, it is all thanks to you that we are live here on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM, going live for myself, Dr. Yana, Dr. Elliott. All thanks to you. And thank you very much for making it happen for us.
Oh, yeah. It's a pleasure.
It's been fun. And even talking tonight, UFOs and aliens with you, like I said, it's something different than what we normally talk about. So, yeah.
It didn't quite go where you thought it was going to go, did you, Elliott?
We're all over the place. Ancient civilizations and, extraterrestrials and RH blood. And, yeah, it was great.
That's all good stuff. All good stuff. Well, yes. It was the Science and Paranormal for you guys. And thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, this late at night. For some of you, it's a different part of the day or morning. So thank you for joining us and listening to us and watching us live. Thank you. And we hope to see you again next week on Tuesday.
Yes.
Have a good night, everyone.
See you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.